The first time my neighbor smiled while watching my corn burn, I realized some people don't want your land because they need it. They want it because they can't stand the idea of somebody else refusing to sell. By the time the fire trucks came screaming down that gravel road, 3 acres of my crop were already gone. The smoke rolling black across the Ohio sky like a storm cloud, and standing there beside the fence line in white capri pants and designer boots was a woman named Vanessa Barron holding an empty gas can like she just won the damn lottery. What she didn't know yet was I'd spent the last 6 weeks preparing for the exact moment she finally lost her mind. My name's Caleb Mercer, and up until last year, my biggest concern in life was whether the rain would hold off long enough to finish harvest before Sunday. I'm a third-generation farmer outside a little town called Bell Ridge, about 40 minutes west of Columbus if traffic behaves itself, which it never does anymore, because half the city keeps moving out here pretending they want country living until they discover actual country things exist. Roosters crow. Tractors smell like diesel. Corn gets dusty. Nature refuses to ask permission from an HOA board before being inconvenient. My grandfather bought our farm in 1957 with money he earned repairing military trucks after Korea. 8 acres. Small by farming standards, but enough to raise a family if you worked hard and didn't mind waking up before the sun your whole life. I grew up believing that land was sacred. Not in some poetic movie way either. I mean literally sacred. Every fence post on that property had somebody's fingerprints on it. My father's sweat. My grandfather's blood. My mother hanging laundry while cicadas screamed through August heat so thick it felt like soup. Then came Oak Hollow Estates. 27 oversized houses built where soybean fields used to be, all beige and gray with fake stone fronts and mailboxes that probably cost more than my first pickup truck. And leading the parade was Vanessa Barron, 49 years old, real estate broker, HOA president, recently divorced, permanently angry. She drove a pearl-white Range Rover and talked like every conversation was secretly being recorded for a TED Talk nobody asked for. At first, it was little things. She complained about my combine being visible from the road, then my fertilizer smell, then my rooster, General Patton. I remember the first time she knocked on my door, standing there smiling so hard it looked painful, holding one of those little leather notebooks rich people carry when they want to seem organized. Caleb, she said, sweet as poison tea. A few residents have expressed concern that your farm equipment may be negatively affecting surrounding property values. I looked past her shoulder at my tractor, sitting exactly where my father parked tractors for 30 years. Ma'am, I said, that tractor was here before your entire subdivision existed. Her smile tightened just enough for me to see the real person underneath. Well, communities evolve. That sentence stuck with me. Communities evolve. Funny how people only say that when they're trying to erase somebody else's history. My wife Nora saw the danger before I did. Nora teaches 2nd grade and has this terrifying ability to read people within about 10 seconds. One night, she stood at the kitchen sink washing corn silk from dinner while our twin boys argued over baseball cards at the table, and she said quietly, "That woman doesn't just dislike the farm, Caleb. She wants something." She was right. 2 days later, I caught Vanessa walking my fence line with 2 men in dress shirts and expensive loafers sinking into the mud like they'd never stepped outside before. I stayed hidden behind the old machine shed while they pointed across my property. "Townhomes here," one of them said. Vanessa nodded. 8 acres total. Perfect footprint. Once the current owner becomes cooperative, this entire corridor changes. Current owner. Not Caleb. Not the Mercer family. Just an obstacle with dirt on his boots. That was the moment I understood this wasn't some petty HOA drama anymore. This woman already had plans for land she didn't own. That night, I called my old Army buddy Travis Reed, who practiced agricultural law down in Cincinnati. "You need cameras," he told me immediately. "And Caleb, document everything." People get weird when development money enters the conversation. Weird turned out to be an understatement. 3 mornings later, I found my irrigation hose sliced open in 4 places. The next week, somebody filed a false environmental complaint claiming I was illegally dumping chemicals near a creek that didn't even run through my property. Then came the Neighborhood Preservation Committee, which sounded official until you realized it was basically Vanessa and 3 bored wine moms taking pictures of my barn from inside a Lexus. One afternoon, I walked out to find Vanessa herself standing beside my mailbox photographing my fuel tank. "You planning to audition for National Geographic?" I asked. She didn't even flinch. "You know, Caleb, stubbornness has bankrupted a lot of farmers. And greed's ruined a lot more people than stubbornness." That smile again. Cold. Thin. Dangerous. "Well," she said softly, "we'll see who breaks first." And standing there in the dust with late summer wind rolling through the corn behind me, I had this strange feeling settle into my chest. The kind soldiers get right before an ambush. Because suddenly it wasn't about complaints anymore. It wasn't about property values. It was war. And the worst part? Vanessa Barron wasn't bluffing. The thing about harassment is people imagine it starts loud. Threats. Screaming. Somebody throwing punches in a parking lot. Real harassment doesn't look like that at first. Real harassment is quiet. Calculated. It's death by 1,000 tiny cuts until you wake up one morning exhausted enough to sell your soul just for peace and quiet. That's exactly what Vanessa Barron was trying to do to me. By September, every single week brought something new. One morning my diesel tank had sugar dumped into it. Another time, somebody loosened the bolts on my trailer hitch, so it nearly came apart heading down Route 42 with 6 tons of feed behind me. Then came the anonymous complaints, noise violations, runoff violations, unsafe agricultural activity, whatever the hell that meant. County inspectors started knowing my address better than my own relatives. Most of them looked embarrassed showing up. One guy from Environmental Services actually pulled me aside after inspecting my compost pile and muttered, "Off the record, somebody's paying real close attention to you." No kidding. The only reason I didn't completely lose my temper was because of Earl Dawson. Earl was 76, retired mailman, lived alone in a little brick ranch house at the edge of Oak Hollow. His wife passed 3 years earlier, and ever since then he mostly sat on his porch drinking black coffee and watching the fields like they were old movies nobody else remembered. Earl had known my father. Hell, he used to bring him tomatoes from his garden every summer. One evening he shuffled across the road while I was repairing fence boards and said quietly, "That Barron woman's been asking questions about your schedule." I stopped hammering. "What kind of questions?" "When you leave. When your wife works late. Whether you lock your equipment sheds." The evening wind moved through the corn behind us with that dry whispering sound fields make right before harvest, and for the first time in my life, my own property didn't feel peaceful anymore. "She offered me $500, Earl said bitterly. Wanted me to report fake safety violations. I stared at him. "You serious?" "She thinks old people are stupid." That old man became my guardian angel after that. Turns out Vanessa had been working half the subdivision, offering favors, cash, even discounted realtor commissions if neighbors documented enough community concerns to pressure the county into action. Most folks ignored her, but desperate people will do ugly things for easy money, especially when the economy's bad and everybody's drowning in credit card debt pretending they're rich. Meanwhile, things at home started getting tense too. Not because Nora blamed me. Honestly, she was stronger than I deserved. But stress changes the air inside a house. Our boys started noticing things. Asking questions. "Dad, are we going to lose the farm?" That question nearly broke me. I remember standing in the kitchen around midnight after everybody went to sleep, staring out the window at the dark fields while the refrigerator hummed behind me. I'd worked this land my entire life. Buried my father under the oak tree by the north fence after cancer took him too fast. Every season of my life existed somewhere in that soil. And some woman in designer sunglasses thought she could erase all of it because developers offered her commission money. That was the night I stopped reacting and started planning. First thing I did was install cameras. Not obvious ones either. Trail cams, motion sensors, thermal imaging near the equipment shed. The Army teaches you something important: people reveal themselves when they think nobody's watching. Vanessa revealed plenty. 3 nights later, I caught her on camera spraying herbicide along my eastern crop line at 2 in the morning. I'll never forget watching that footage. There she was, ponytail tucked into a baseball cap, carrying a commercial sprayer like some suburban Grim Reaper, methodically poisoning corn plants worth my kids' college tuition. You could actually hear her muttering under her breath while she worked. Sell the damn farm already. I watched that clip 3 times sitting alone in my office, feeling something cold settle into my chest. Not rage exactly. Rage burns hot. This was different. This was clarity. The next morning, I drove straight to Travis Reed's office, carrying a flash drive and a folder full of printed complaints. He watched the footage silently, then leaned back in his chair. "Well," he said finally, "that's felony crop destruction. You think she'll stop?" Travis actually laughed. "No, people like this never stop voluntarily. But now we know something important." "What's that?" "She's desperate, and desperate people make mistakes." That prediction turned out to be real damn accurate, because about a week later, Earl showed up on my back porch looking pale enough to scare me. "She's in trouble," he whispered. "What do you mean?" I overheard her arguing in the clubhouse parking lot. Something about contract deadlines, penalties, money she already spent. Now that got my attention. See, until then I thought Vanessa was just greedy, maybe narcissistic. But desperation changes the equation. Desperate people escalate. So I started digging. County property records are public if you know where to look, and what I found made my stomach turn. Vanessa already had a development agreement lined up. 32 luxury townhomes. Projected value just under $14 million. And buried inside the paperwork was the real bombshell: her commission bonus depended on vacant land acquisition before October 1st. Meaning she didn't just want me gone eventually. She needed me gone fast. Suddenly everything made sense. The pressure campaign, the fake complaints, the sabotage. She wasn't trying to annoy me into selling. She was trying to financially suffocate me before her deal collapsed. That same night, Earl handed me something that changed the entire war. A recording. Turns out the old man accidentally overheard Vanessa talking in her garage during one of those little HOA committee meetings she held like mafia sit-downs. The audio was scratchy, but her voice came through crystal clear. "If the farmer folds before October, we all get paid." Then another voice asked, "And if he doesn't?" Silence. Then Vanessa laughed softly. "Farm accidents happen every day. I swear to God the room temperature dropped 10 degrees listening to that sentence." Nora looked at me from across the kitchen table, eyes wide with fear. "She's dangerous." "Yeah," I said quietly. "She is." That should have been the moment I went to police. Maybe a smarter man would have. But here's the thing people don't understand unless they've lived rural. By the time authorities take harassment seriously, families like mine are usually already bankrupt. Evidence disappears. Complaints become neighbor disputes. Developers hide behind lawyers while regular people drown. So instead, I prepared my own counterattack. 3 days later, I filed an agricultural preservation easement on all 8 acres. Quietly. No announcement. No public drama. Just paperwork. Once approved, the land could never legally become housing development property again. Ever. Didn't matter who owned it. Didn't matter how much money changed hands. Those fields would stay farmland permanently. And the beautiful part? Vanessa had absolutely no idea. So while she kept escalating, while she kept committing crimes chasing that payday, her entire multi-million-dollar development deal had already become worthless. I remember standing in the barn after filing those documents, smelling hay and motor oil while rain hammered the roof overhead, and for the first time in months I smiled. Because suddenly the balance of power had shifted. Vanessa Barron thought she was hunting a tired farmer. What she didn't realize yet was she just backed a very patient man into a corner. And cornered men stop fighting fair. The night Vanessa Barron burned my cornfield started strangely quiet. One of those heavy late September evenings where the air feels thick enough to hold secrets. No wind, no crickets, just heat hanging over the fields while the sky turned that deep purple right before full darkness settles in. Earl showed up around sunset looking nervous, and desperate people eventually stop pretending they're civilized. That's why I'd spent the previous 2 weeks preparing for arson. Not hoping for it, preparing. Thermal cameras across the east field. Motion sensors linked straight to county dispatch. Fire suppression tanks staged near the barn. Backup pumps ready to go. Even Travis thought I was being paranoid until he saw the recordings and heard Vanessa's "farm accident happened" comment. Turns out I wasn't paranoid enough. Around 11:40 that night, my phone buzzed. Motion alert. East fence line. I rolled out of bed instantly. Nora sat up. "Caleb, I know." I kissed her forehead, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the back porch where the night smelled like dry dirt and harvested corn. Off in the distance, I could barely make out movement through the thermal scope. 2 figures, one carrying fuel cans, the other pacing lookout. Vanessa and some skinny guy in a hoodie, I later learned, was a private investigator she'd hired off Craigslist because apparently criminal masterminds shop discount now. I moved quietly through the rows, boots soft against loose soil, heart steady in that strange calm that comes right before chaos. The Army wired something into me years ago. When danger finally arrives, fear disappears and focus takes over. I got within 50 yards before hearing Vanessa whisper sharply, "Make it look accidental." The guy hesitated. "You sure about this?" She won't have a choice after tonight. No crop, no income, no farm. Then she struck the lighter. I've seen combat overseas, seen explosions, seen buildings burn, but there's something uniquely awful about watching your own field catch fire. Corn goes up fast when it's dry. 1 second it's standing there silver under moonlight. The next it's roaring orange like somebody opened the gates of hell. Flames race down the fuel line so quickly it almost looked alive. And Vanessa smiled. Actually smiled. That was the moment any tiny piece of sympathy I still had for her finally died. Then the siren started. Loud. Close. Way too fast. Vanessa spun around in confusion just as floodlights exploded across the field from the county access road. Fire trucks. Sheriff deputies. 2 state troopers. My thermal alert system had automatically contacted emergency dispatch the second temperatures spiked above threshold range. She never even had time to run. Deputy Collins tackled the investigator near the ditch while Vanessa just stood there frozen holding an empty gas can, flames reflecting in her wide, terrified eyes like she finally understood the game was over. "What is this?" she screamed. I stepped out from the corn, rose slowly. "This," I said, "is what happens when you underestimate farmers." The look on her face, man, I'll remember that till the day I die. Not anger. Not arrogance. Fear. Pure human fear. Because in that instant she realized something horrifying. Every crime she committed for months had been documented, recorded, organized. Waiting. Firefighters attacked the blaze fast enough to save most of the field, but about 3 acres burned before containment. Standing there watching smoke roll into the sky, I honestly felt sick, even with insurance, even with evidence. Seeing your livelihood burn hurts different. Vanessa kept trying to talk her way out. "You can't prove anything." Deputy Collins literally held up one of the fuel cans. "With your fingerprints?" Then Travis Reed arrived, carrying a folder thick enough to stop bullets. And that's when Vanessa's world truly collapsed. See, while she'd been obsessing over stealing my land, Travis had been building a civil racketeering case against her, the HOA committee, and the development company backing the deal. Financial fraud. Conspiracy. agricultural harassment, property sabotage, all legally documented. Then I dropped the final bomb. The farm can't be developed anyway. Vanessa blinked at me. What? Agricultural preservation easement, Travis said calmly. Filed 3 weeks ago. I swear the woman physically stopped breathing. No, that's impossible. Your deal's dead, Vanessa, I told her quietly. Been dead for weeks. She actually stumbled backward like somebody punched her in the chest. All those crimes, all that destruction, all for land she could never legally touch. And right there beside a burning cornfield under flashing police lights, Vanessa Barron finally broke. Started crying, screaming, blaming investors, blaming stress, blaming everybody except herself. But honestly, nobody listening cared anymore. 6 months later, she pled guilty to felony arson, conspiracy, criminal vandalism, and fraud charges. The developer settled out of court after state investigators uncovered similar harassment campaigns in 2 other counties. Oak Hollow Estates dissolved their HOA after half the neighborhood turned on each other during depositions. Funny how fast fake communities collapse once lawyers get involved. As for us, we stayed. The boys still run through those same fields every summer. Nora planted wildflowers near the east fence where the fire started. Earl drinks coffee on our porch most mornings now instead of alone across the road. And every once in a while, when sunset hits the corn just right, I think about how close we came to losing everything because one person decided greed mattered more than decency. But here's the part people argue about whenever I tell this story. Some folks think I should have gone to police earlier. Maybe they're right. Others think Vanessa deserved worse. Maybe they're right too. All I know is there's something deeply broken about a world where family farms get treated like obstacles while developers destroying communities call themselves visionaries. So now I want to hear from you. If somebody spent months trying to destroy your home, your livelihood, your family's future, how far would you go to fight back? And more importantly, at what point does self-defense stop looking polite? If this story hit home for you, drop your thoughts in the comments because trust me, I know I'm not the only person who's ever had to deal with neighbors from hell. And if you want more real stories about ordinary people standing up to corrupt systems, hit subscribe because next week's story somehow gets even crazier.